about that? I had no
I'd be
idea.
doing better.
Good morning. I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors to order on Tuesday, June 25th at approximately 9 a.m. Would you please join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Forgot how to say it.
Roll call, please.
Okay, one more time.
18 present, 3 absent. Presentation of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Randy was. Correspondence. In your packet, you will see the unassigned fund balance paperwork, also resolutions from the Town of Brussels and Town of Surgeon Bay regarding EMS. I think also passed out was correspondence from Town of Sebastopol. Public comment. Does anybody in the audience care to make a comment? Approval of the minutes of May 28th, 2019, regular
Mr.
meeting.
Chairman,
Yes,
I have a question on the correspondence. I'm sorry I was spacing a bit there.
it's okay.
I got a call yesterday from an individual complaining about a fire going in the Neswapi town. And I called to check on it, got the town chairman to call me back on everything, and it looks like it's been dealt with. But the big question was, as this individual called me back a second time, they called 911 to complain about it because with the weather being so heavy, the smoke was not going up, it was staying down, and it was, smoke was infiltrating his house. His wife had to leave, she was sick, he was sick, it was just, it was a bad situation. And what he was really upset about was he called 911 to complain because he couldn't figure out anybody else to call. And then when after talking to them, he asked, well, give me the fire department then. Give me the, we can't do that. You have to Google that. We won't give you that number. Now, I'm not on a committee that deals with that. And I said, well, I just cannot believe that that's the way we'd handle things. But I guess I told him, well, like county board tomorrow, I will bring this up and ask how this could be. How could you possibly call, now not everybody is computer savvy and tied into it. You call 911, you need help. You don't need some person tell you, nope, and that's their job to, you know, to tell them, can't give you that number. You're gonna have to Google that and get it yourself to call the fire department. I'd like an explanation. I told him I'd get one, and it just didn't make a lot of sense to me that they would say, Google it. So, is there anybody that could answer that?
Not directly right now, but obviously if it's a call to our dispatch center, that's all recorded, so I can follow up with the supervisor and we'll check into that.
There you go. It's all recorded, so
Yes.
so you know whether this guy, because I have no idea whether I'm being told the truth either, but
Right,
it
well,
sounded
we'll follow up
legit,
and we'll
sounded
make
very
sure,
concerned.
we can follow up and make sure what the response was.
Okay.
John?
Mr. Chair and Ken, there's no reason they couldn't have directed that individual to the town chairman. Each town is responsible for their fire departments,
Right.
and they should have been able to give out the fire chief's telephone number. That's not confidential.
Well, yeah, got that. Didn't get a telephone number for, so he called Bud.
Well, they should have been able to give
And
that
they wouldn't
number.
do that.
Yeah.
They said that they wouldn't give out, and I thought, well, wait a minute. It didn't make sense to me.
Besides, nobody would have been there.
I-
We're going to stay with public comment for a moment.
Sure, and there's this one thing, just because I got several calls, and I know it was brought up, and actually, Susie, thank you for the reminder. But the one thing we did discuss last month, obviously, was our transportation program. I think we had mentioned last month in terms of that we're going out for the bids, in terms of moving forward, and that you would see a series of resolutions, I guess, in the future. And I got some calls of why that was not on the agenda for this month. And really what we're doing is the way we I guess, advise the staff to move forward. We're moving forward with the bid, so that's built in. And then what we're going to do is, obviously, we'll build into our budget process the operations of the transportation program. And then what we're going to do is follow our regular process in terms of any type of reorganization. In other words, Human Services Board recommended moving it out from that body under my direction and setting up the new oversight committee. So what we will do is we will bring that forward as resolutions, but we'll take that through, I guess, a more traditional process. The biggest thing that we made a decision on last month is just to proceed with the program as funded, and we're doing that. But I just want to give you some feedback. So if you do get calls on where are we with the transportation program, it's moving forward as planned or as decided last month, but we'll be bringing back the resolution as far as the position and organization and stuff like that following our regular process. So I just wanted to give that feedback to you.
Okay, approval of the minutes of the May 28th, 2019 regular meeting.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Changes, additions, deletions, comments, grammatical errors, other remarks? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any business or updates? Resolutions. Resolution 2019-41, urging the legislator to revise statutes for court fees and costs in probate and juvenile cases. Nancy?
I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution Number 2019-41, urging the legislature to revise the statutes for court fees and costs in probate and juvenile cases. I think
Yep.
She's here.
Jennifer is here to, if you'd like an explanation to it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Jennifer, good morning.
Good morning. If you have any questions, a lot of this is just, there's two big categories. One is the differences in fees and costs between the clerk of court's office and the register and probate office. Most counties in the state, they're either located in the same place, sometimes with the same employees and equipment, but the fees and costs are different. So that has never made any sense to me, so that's part of this. And the other, there's a few miscellaneous statutes in the 8 years I've been register and probate that I thought, well, why is there not a fee charged for this when it seems logical that there would be somewhere else? A couple of years ago, the trust statutes in Wisconsin were changed, and when they brought it over to probate, they didn't adjust our fee statute. So pretty much everything that was ever filed in the clerk of court's office, there's a fee for,
Yeah.
and a lot of things in probate and juvenile. Actually, the only juvenile case that thing that juvenile court handles, interestingly, is adoptions for juveniles as well as adults. So that's one of the things you'll see there, that it's completely optional for adults to have adoptions. So a fee of some sort seemed appropriate to help cover court costs. So in talking with some people from the state, you know, when people are writing laws, they are trying to make the big changes, and that's great. And I think this is just cleaning up a few things. I'm hopeful. I addressed my association of registers and probate, and they're enthusiastic about it, and I've kept them informed throughout the process. So they've seen the memos before I went to admin committee, and I will share with them whatever comes out of today's meeting, and then take it forward, hopefully, to the state in a variety of ideas. And I thank all of you for helping me with that. A number of you helped me with that in the process.
Any questions? If not, on a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, if you don't mind, this is one of those cases where we have a lot of these that come forward, you know, from other counties in terms of resolutions and doing the research, but I just like to commend Jennifer for all of her work. She actually isn't on the board, but she actually coordinated this through her organization statewide, and she did a lot of research, and this is just one of those things where I really appreciated the effort and work that she did for that, so it's pretty cool. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Resolution 2019-42, School Resource Officer Donation, Gifts, or Grants. Joel?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-42, School Resource Officer.
Second.
And I believe the sheriff is here. She could explain it better than me.
Morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. The resolution, I worked with Grant to adopt this. We are working with the Door County Crime Prevention Fund, or Foundation, to collect donations. I had a lot of people in the community approach me and want to make donations to help us start up this program. So this was the best way to approach that. The equipment list there is basically all the items that we need to start the 3 new officers in August. The exception would be the vehicles that, when I talked with the foundation, they wanted the budget for worst-case scenario. So that is a full budget. We do have a Plan B. If we're not able to get enough funding for the vehicles, we will use some of the vehicles in our fleet that are going to be going out and being replaced with our new squads.
Questions? If not, since this one's yes, Susan.
This isn't really a question. I just note that in the resolution, you have Public Safety Committee some places and Law Enforcement Committee at the end, and I'm guessing that should be Public Safety Committee. So that's just a wording.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll make those changes. Any other questions? If not, we'll go to the voter board since this is going to involve funds. That is passed on a vote of 18 yes, 0 no, and 3 absent. Resolution 2019-43, duly certified proceedings of County Board in electronic format and posted on county's website versus publication in pamphlet form. Would you like to explain that along with Grant?
Sure. You wanna do
I'll make a motion, we approve the resolution.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Sure. Grant, you want to just do a quick summary?
Yeah, very briefly, what this resolution would do would take our, the duly certified proceedings of the county board away from the paper paradigm it's currently in and allow it to be retained in electronic status. And this is, the resolution explains where we are and where we want to be. And I think the primary driving factor behind this is that the cost of producing the paper version of this and distributing it is not trivial, and by posting it online, at least an argument can be made that it's available more widely to more people. And this is a trend that is occurring throughout the state. Counties are going from paper to an electronic format for this, but it does require a resolution so that the county board approves this change, and that's the purpose of the resolution.
Questions? If not, all in favor? Oh, Dave, sorry.
How often do we actually get requests for this?
For hard copies?
Yeah.
We really don't get requests for hard copies. We make about 4 or 5 really hard copies that go to the library. I think maybe up in your office, I don't know if you maybe get one, and then we keep some. It's just a lot of process to even put those books together instead of,
Agreed.
you gotta make it fit in a certain format.
I was just curious how often
Yeah,
actually
it's not too often.
we know.
I mean, there are times that people may ask for can you go look up this resolution, so then we're looking it up for them, not necessarily giving you a copy of the whole book.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Anybody else? If not, on a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 2019-44, committee appointment CCS-CCST Coordinating Committee.
I'll make a motion to approve that resolution.
Second.
Ken, do you want to?
Sure, just, pretty straightforward. This, again, we have a vacancy on our CCS committee, and you have a individual that Joe was able to work with as a volunteer that would be willing to serve. The biography is on page 20 of the packet, and that's what it's for.
Any questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinances, amendment of 340.002 Door County Code. John?
I make a motion for the approval of ordinance 2019-06.
Second.
This comes from a request from the Union Town Board. They're wanting to lower the speed limit. It was brought before the Highway Committee. It was reviewed there. It was reviewed by the Highway Commissioner, and it was voted upon unanimously for approval to be sent on to this committee for approval.
Questions?
Did they state a concern for the reduction?
Well, it used to be the former church there. There's a tavern there now. It's the curve in No More, if you
Yep.
folks are aware of it. There's a school bus picking up 8 children there. There's lots of driveways in a very short distance. And if people want to travel in speed, the highway is right there. They can jump on the highway, so we're not impairing anybody's travel time, we didn't figure.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, since it's an ordinance, we'll go to the voter board.
I'm done.
That is passed on a vote of 18 yes, 0 no, and 3 absent. Item 12, special reports, compensation for county board members, Wisconsin statutes 59.10, Wisconsin statutes. Ken?
Sure. So if you would go to page 22 of your packet, page 22 and 23, I think the easiest way is just to walk through. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but I would like just to walk through. The reason why this is before you is because before the next county board can take out papers in terms of the election in April, we need to have the compensation established before that. So I guess what our goal is to hopefully have this established by August, not only for that purpose, but also for our budgeting purpose, should we make a change. So on behalf of the administrative committee, we have had, multiple meetings and discussions, and then they asked me to put together, like a final proposal. And the reason why it's here today is just to look for feedbacks, comments, concerns, red flags, whatever you would like to bring up. And then we can discuss it more, and David can kind of go through that process. But really what we're looking at is, 2 options. So just going through the memo, so the first one would be just maintain the status quo, just as we're doing it today with no adjustments. And then the second one would be to switch to a salary-based policy that also includes funds for travel-related expenses. And again, when we say travel, it includes the registration, lodging, and meals. The mileage would remain separate, and I can explain that when we go down a little bit further. So obviously, just in terms of the analysis, under the current policy, obviously there would remain status quo. If we would do the salary, I'm just going to walk through those steps. So the salary, we're proposing to be $6,504 per year. Again, just paid on a monthly basis of $542 per month. The one thing that was discussed with the administrative committee would be in case of individuals choosing not to attend meetings, there's a clause in there that you can miss up to 5 meetings, but after 5 meetings, $100 would be deducted per meeting if it's unexcused. I guess you would get, that would be considered, or you could get it classified as that excused at the discretion of the committee chair or the county board chair. For the county board chairperson, the additional salary of $5,496 would be added, or the equivalent of $12,000 a year. The vice chair would be increased by $1,496 in addition to that, for a total of $8,000 per year. We would continue to have the committee chairs where they get an additional $250 per time or per committee they serve as chair. So that'd be consistent with what we have now. This is the one thing that we did discuss, is actually setting up again, for travel-related expenses, we'd allocate up to $1,500 for conferences. And again, that would, or conferences, trainings, or seminars. And again, that would include registration, lodging, and meals. And again, mileage would remain separate. And let me just read this one part so it's clear. The funds are available only for approved conferences, seminars, trainings, and meetings, and actual registration, lodging, and meal expenses incurred. Unused funds at the end of the year are returned to the general fund. So again, just to make this clear, it's not, the $1,500 isn't part of your salary. It's just a amount that you can use for travel-related expenses for conferences and so forth. And then we did have a thing in there in case there was a situation where a supervisor would hit that cap, they'd only be able to go above that cap with approval of the county board, is what was discussed at the administrative committee. Was asked just in terms of why $1,500, and again, I worked with Jill and just looked at our average cost, so it would provide in general attending 2 WCA conferences, 1 general conference, and then usually like 2 regional meetings, or a lot of those times are just like one-day meetings or seminars that are available. The next item is supervisors will continue to be entitled to mileage reimbursement. And then the one thing we did have to add was this: for if a supervisor resides on Washington Island, they will be continued to entitle for costs referred to lodging and meals in the ferry transport. So we had to, we wanted to make sure we continued to include that. If you look at the fiscal impact, you can see what our average, it's a 2-year average for our current per diem policy. It ends up being about $158,000. Under the salary based, you can see with a total allocation of the travel expenses, it actually is $179,814. But again, that's with everyone going to everything. But again, our experience, if you look at our 3-year average, is about $16,000. So that's what I'm saying, that a certain portion of that would obviously be returned to the general fund. So again, if you look at it, we're projecting a total cost of about $162,568. In terms of the, I guess the comparison, we did put some pros and cons of what we thought would be between the two. But again, ultimately, the final recommendation from our administration standpoint is that from a fiscal impact, it's very close. From an administrative standpoint, it's a little bit easier, obviously, for us to do the salary, and we're not tracking all the sheets and everything related to it. But again, it states down in the recommendation, it's not significant enough to force a decision one way or the other. So it's really your preference in terms of how you'd like to establish the salary for the upcoming board moving forward. So that's just the quick background.
And I would just mention before we have discussion or comments or questions about it, we would like to have a resolution in place for August, for the August meeting. So we don't have to settle this today. If you want to settle today, fine, but we can talk about it and next month discuss it again before we come up with direction back to the admin committee. But the admin committee would like to have a resolution to forward to the board for approval in August. So it's plenty of time to get it into the budget process for Ken. So, questions, comments? Benny?
I'm fine with either way, but I'm just wondering about how we continue to maintain a balance of how many committees someone's on if we all have the same salary, but some people might be on 2 or 3 and someone else is on 4 or 5. So I just wonder what your thoughts were for that.
So that's a good question. So the part of the thing is obviously the committees are assigned by the county board chair and the committee that he establishes. So I mean, we try to balance that part out. Maybe David can answer that part. But I think the one thing with, to me it's not an argument with it, but to me there's a way of looking at it is, yes, there's a time related to attending the meetings, but there's also the time that you might spend with your constituents and other times you spend outside of this meetings that accounts for your work and effort going into the position. So I guess it's reflecting the balance of all that. If you just go off the meetings, yes, you're definitely spending more time in meetings if you're on more committees. So that is a good point.
Laura?
Yeah, I guess to bounce off of that, for a supervisor's comment is that there could be a supervisor that just serves on one committee.
Or none.
Or none, right. So maybe that is something we want to consider with this as a tiered. If you sit on maybe on average, 4 or 5 committees, that's your tier of 6504. And if you're only on 2 or something, there's a different salary for that. I think that is something that should be considered. So I'm not sure what everyone else's thoughts on that, but that'd be a nice balance.
David?
Staying on that topic, what about committees that rarely meet or committees that meet far more often than other committees?
What comes to mind on that is like RPC. RPC meets frequently. They're often very long meetings. They're engaged with a lot of people over a longer period of time. I can think of meetings that are routinely held outside of the county where somebody has to go to, they could be monthly or quarterly, they have to spend 3 or 4 hours traveling to go to the meeting and then come back. So none of that no travel time would be paid, just that would be part of the salary. And I guess I would mention that when Ken put this together, the salaries that everybody had this sheet that was passed out. When Ken put this together, he took all of the averages that people were making and came up with the dollar amount to allocate to the salary. So if you want to change the salary amount higher or lower, that's also up for discussion.
Yep,
Okay?
that's true.
He put this together trying and maintain approximately what the current expenses and expenditures were. So. Dave?
Different topic than on that line. When the comparison was done between other counties, in my conversations with other county boards members, quite often these committees that they have don't even meet more than maybe 4 times a year, twice a year. Did anybody respond back with quantity of meetings they actually attend? That affects those variables as well.
I did not search for that information. No, I did not.
And not,
John?
Ken? As far as the missing of 5 meetings, that includes not just county board meetings, but committee meetings as well, correct?
Correct.
Second question to that, the $250 for a committee chair, that's a one-time $250. It's not if you chair 2 or 3 different committees, you're not getting that. It's just $250 in the salary.
It'd be per committee that you're a chair. So if you're the chair of 2 committees, it'd be $500.
Okay.
3 committees,
Thank you.
$750.
That's what I want to clarify. Thank you.
Yes.
Helen?
Well, I don't do this for the money, so to speak. And, I mean, there's times in my life when I've had time and times in my life when I haven't. And I think, being on committees is kind of a personal choice. If you're interested and you have the time and the resources, you go ahead and do it. I don't think, when we start getting nitpicky about committees and money and all of that, I think it kind of defeats the purpose of why we ran in the first place.
Susan?
I feel that when somebody decides to run for county board, they need to understand that part of that responsibility is being on committees and forwarding the work of the county. And I have confidence in the chair that while it's not going to be exact to the nickel or dime, but that the chair will try to balance in discussion with the person and whatever, so that it is fairly even. I too feel that this is, yes, we need to pay some amount. We want working people to be part of our group, and time is money for them. So I totally get that people need to be paid, but it is also public service. So, so sometimes you're giving of your time. And I particularly like the idea of having a set amount of a fund for our travel outside the county board committees and so on. Because I do think there are lots of opportunities, and even in the last couple of years, WCA has increased the possibilities, and that's all good stuff. I'm not saying there isn't value in them, but there is a limit to what we can pay. So having a fund is reasonable, and again, if you really wanted to do it and you were over, you can go on your own dime. It's not that you can't go, it's just that the county can only reimburse so much.
Laura?
Yeah, question. The board's compensation wages for 2016 and 2017, where were those numbers at?
2016?
Yeah, and 2015.
I do not have those. I can get those if you'd like for next month.
Okay. Yeah.
I would suspect they'd be pretty close to what?
Yes. I know their 3-year average is going to be really close. I know this in 2017, you'll see that it was up, just in terms of the average, but that was also, we had numerous meetings in regards to the community center when that was going forward, and we did the walkthroughs and stuff like that. So we had a lot of meetings. That's why 2017 was, I think, an anomaly in terms of total expenses.
I have just a further that. What were their total costs on the training, such if we're putting a cap at 15? What has it been in the past, either 17, 18 on our, what we're allowing?
Again, if we look at our trend, far as an average, we're averaging about 16,000 a year.
Dave?
Building on John's question, when the chair is unavailable for a meeting, a subcommittee meeting, how do you pay for the vice chair that attends, that chairs the meeting for that day?
I think the money.
I didn't see that spelled out here somewhere.
Donation.
As far as the comment about people running for the office, I found it, I basically ran because my son called and told me my district representative was not running. And I did not look at dollar values. Yes, it's reasonable to get paid. It was very difficult for me to find some concept of what I might expect. One of the items was you do talk to constituents outside of meetings. So if the only real bulk money you do get is this meeting right here, and if you don't attend this meeting, you don't get paid for it. But I didn't run for the money. I ran to represent my neighborhood and be in the middle of the government. Money is valuable, but it wasn't a deciding factor for me. Being able to have an understanding of what you might expect, if you're putting all the values together, yes, but I'm not here for the meetings. I'm here for the events.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so, Dan.
One question came to my mind. I know we have to do this before we take out papers, et cetera, et cetera. If we were to go to salary, how are the people that are not on county board get compensated?
That was one of my questions.
Oh, committee members that are not.
Civilians.
Oh.
Well, whatever you call them, civilians, people that are not on county board, that are on committees that get compensated on days like we do.
Non-supervisor positions.
But if we went to salary, how would they be compensated?
We could leave the current structure for them in place,
Okay.
so they're paid by the meeting.
We never have really brought that up. I don't remember anymore.
Yep.
So, okay.
Good point. Dave?
That was one of my questions, and I went through last night and looked at all the committees we have. We have a lot of civilians on them. Now, whether or not they get paid, I don't know, because I don't attend those meetings.
They do.
Yeah, most of them do.
I figured they probably do. So we'd still be keeping a variation of that structure anyways. Personally, I've always felt that I feel more comfortable getting paid for the work I actually do rather than the presumed potential work that I'm doing. I'm not in favor of a salary system. It doesn't seem appropriate at all. If I'm not there, I shouldn't get paid. If I'm attending, if I'm a member of a committee that meets more often or less often, risk is a committee that has not met at all yet this year. But yet I'm a member of that committee.
Megan?
On the other side of that, and I'm not sure that I have a preference right now, but on the other side of that, I would say that time-wise, I spend more time outside of meetings doing this work than I do in meetings, and unrelated to meetings, unrelated to agendas and whatever else, just talking with constituents. So that kind of plays more into the salaried concept. And I will say, while yes, I don't feel that probably anybody does this for the compensation factor necessarily. As a working person, another positive would be being able to budget and add that into a monthly budget. And every month it's kind of like, surprise, this is what our compensation is going to be for that month, depending on what's going on, what meetings are taking place, so on and so forth. So I guess I would tend to lean more towards what's easiest from a clerical standpoint. But I see Dave's point as well, but my time is not associated with how many meetings I go to.
So if I can just make a comment in reference to that, my town board meeting, now I'm retired from that, but we were paid, and I've been an advocate for this for a long time. We get paid a salary, monthly salary, and we get paid based on meetings. And to do a flat fee this way doesn't make sense to me, but to do a base fee that represents that time you do spend. We all spend time with our constituents outside of the world. And you get compensated for your attendance of the events where you have to make decisions. That's the way our town board has always done it. That's always made sense to me. And that's why I always considered this 150 as part of that way I get paid for that out of hours time.
Could you explain the
Sure, so.
reason we can't do a hybrid?
Right, so it was questioned at our administrative committee meeting that if we could do a hybrid, and while they do maybe potentially exist, I guess our advice from Grant, and Grant, you can clarify, but our advice from Grant, just based off the statutes, is that's not legal. And while those other areas may not be getting challenged, it's not putting us in a good position to do a hybrid system. I don't know if you want to say more than that, Grant. But.
Yeah, I can just speak to counties. In my opinion, counties aren't permitted with Milwaukee and Dane, some of the larger ones, to do a hybrid system. Towns operate under a separate set of statutes and have more home rule authority, and they're able to do that. But Door County, in my estimation, and I've offered this opinion for probably a decade or more now, can't do a hybrid. You either have to implement the per diem or go to a salary. What the statute does allow, and is reflected in the proposal that's been put together, is supplementary compensation for a chairperson. We could add in, as David suggested, supplementary compensation for a vice chairperson. Again, it wouldn't be based on what you actually did. It would just be a dollar amount, and it could be based on the average of how many times a vice chair steps in for a chair.
Minnie, I'm sorry.
How does it impact the departments? And I guess I need a refresher now, but like if RPC, for example, has more meetings, more time, not many committee members, but how does that whole balance? Is it kind of a wash for the department end as far as how they're billed for their county board time or committee times?
Right, so what we do as far as the budget process right now is that the committee time is actually built into each department budget. So we'll pull that out of each department's budget, and it'll just go into the county board budget. In terms of the overall impact, though, like I said, it'll be pretty much dollar for dollar equal.
Okay.
So we'll pull it out, but overall, it shouldn't have an impact. The only way it could have an impact would be if we had like $10,000 in their budget, and they said, oh, no, I'm 10,000 under, I'm going to buy 5 new machines. Now we spent $10,000 more, but we wouldn't do that. So, yeah.
Helen?
So now being part of the salaried part is kind of nice because you don't have to think. But you also have extra meetings that, you're thinking, oh, this is. The one thing I found, though, is that when you're paid kind of by the hour, you pay attention. It may be hard to corral the group, but you pay more attention to how long that meeting is. If you're salaried, those meetings can go forever, and there's no way, I guess that's maybe a negative part of it that I have become aware of, that there is no cap on how long a meeting should be financially.
Roy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a plan that's very good for our committees because all committees are very important in this county, and they're oversight committees. They don't necessarily have to meet every month, and this plan would treat all committees the same. And it might be encouraged people to move from committee to committee, not staying on the same committee for 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years. So I think this is a good plan for committees. Also, when you go to these conferences, if their meat isn't in the conference, you don't feel guilty because you're not being paid to go to the conference. Because I've been to some of these conferences that, hey, they weren't worth going to, and as a result, we didn't go back again the second time. But this is a good plan, especially for the people just starting out, because when they just start out on the county board, they usually don't get into meet committees. They usually get into committees that are very short in duration. They don't last too long. But this would treat the young people the same way.
Thank you. Anybody else? Dave?
I'm going to bring up a different question. Why do we, looking at that chart of counties, why do we have 21 members? There's some that are just the same size and only have 16.
That's a whole nother discussion for a different day. I'm on the firing squad right now for this one, so I don't, that one will come up in 2 years. So,
I'd still like the understanding of it.
so no, actually that'll come up actually in 2021, because once this US Census is done, we'll have to go through the whole redistricting. And one of the first things that the county board will do for that process is establish the number of seats. And then once you establish the number of seats, you'll go through and define your districts. And there's rules for that, but that's done as part of that process. So it's been that way for a while, but it actually comes up every 10 years in terms of that process for establishing the districts.
It's just that in the background, I keep hearing comments about the county board costing so much, and that'd be a simple answer. When I look at some of these other counties that really aren't all that different than ours, 21 members is actually quite a few members to have. If you went to the salary, that's an easy multiplier.
Biz?
In regards to number 6, the 3 approved out-of-town meetings like Wisconsin Counties Association, Legislative Exchange, and Legislative Days. If you miss any of those 3, those aren't counted as an absent to a meeting? Those are volunteer to go to?
Correct. Anything that's considered a conference, training, or like a seminar, those are all, that's not considered a required thing. That was just an example of how we came up with that amount. Once you have that amount, as a supervisor, you could choose to attend, in essence, anything that would be an approved meeting by your committee or by the county board, or not attend those.
Well, that $1,500 has to be used for registration, lodging, and meals, but the mileage is separate?
Correct.
Well, if you went to all 3 of those, I would think you'd gobble up most of that $1,500. You're paying for the lodging, you're paying for the registration, and
right.
So then if you're on an out-of-town meeting, and I'll use examples like the Leo Board or Lakeshore Cap, the way I'm reading this, then, with approval of the chair, you would be paid for the travel in addition to the mileage?
That part, if it's part of a committee structure, you're just attending as the committee member, so you wouldn't get salary for, because it's under the salary structure, you're just getting paid your salary. You get paid your mileage for going to the meeting, as you traditionally would do. In terms of if the committee has, I'm not familiar with any committees that have a required registration. Usually a committee meeting like Lakeshore Cap or the other ones are just regular committees that we have appointments on, but there's not a cost to go to those meetings as far as a registration fee. So,
well, what I'm getting at is I kind of inherited Lakeshore Cap after Mark Miller left, and this last meeting was in Sheboygan. So you're wrapping up a lot of hours, and you travel both ways just to get to the meeting.
Yep.
The meeting could last an hour and a half to 2 hours, but you're wrapping up a lot more than that just in the travel. And if that $1,500 is available for some of that, and if you go to those other meetings, I don't think there'd even be enough money to do that, so.
So in the case that you brought up, no, that would not count against your travel amount. So because what you're getting paid for now is really your mileage, which is not included, so your mileage would be paid separate. So that would not count against your $1,500.
What you need to think of the $1,500 as reimbursed for expenses that were actually incurred. It would never, under the salary concept, there was never pay for travel. So it would be, for instance, mileage would be reimbursed at the IRS rate, lodging, whatever the state rate happened to be, and any registration fee, whatever registration fee was actually paid. So if that helps.
Right, but using Biz's example, there would not be any per diem hours.
Correct.
For the travel time that you spent. It would only be mileage.
Correct.
And any pay would be under the salary. There would be nothing additional. Right.
Correct.
That's one of there's a couple of committees like Biz brought up that's a drawback to.
Well, currently, the way we're operating, that meeting is paid portal to portal.
Right.
Correct.
So when you leave home,
yep,
and then you go to the meeting, no matter how long the meeting lasts, and you get back, whatever those hours are, that's what the compensation is now.
Correct. And that the difference would be now is that you're getting paid your mileage, the IRS mileage, but you're under the salary system, so you're just attending the meeting.
Well, and I guess the other question is have you figured out about what the average would be per supervisor? How many meetings that they would be assigned to them when the reconstruction's done in April?
Again, that's at the discretion of the county board chair and the committee that he sets up, but I know what we've done since I've been here for each county board is we actually have a spreadsheet where we try to account the balance the county board with an equal number of committees. So I think David's done a very good job at that. But
Well, if you divided it up equal, would it be like each supervisor would have 4 meetings?
I think right now, depending upon what you're on, it's between 3 and 5.
Yep.
3 to 5, 4 is kind of the average.
And there's a few that I know had 6, and I think one had 7 at the time, but those were for committees that met like once or twice a year too. Like I think we had one for, I think there's one like, for example, I don't know, Ken, if you're on that for like Bay Lake Regional, not Bay Lake,
We're not in that anymore.
or that, yeah, there's some, but I know there's a couple that only meet like once or twice a year, so, I mean, some of those might put you up higher, but those meet so infrequent, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I chair risk management, and I think we met once last year. And this year, I don't even know if we've even met this year.
Not yet, nope.
Helen?
Well, I chair the Sister City Committee, and we don't get paid for that. It's an ad hoc committee. So there are some that you're assigned to, you don't even, it's not even thrown in the pot, so to speak. So.
Right, it's true too. Anybody else at the moment? Okay, so we can think about this for another month. We'll resurface it again next month, and hopefully next month we'll get a direction from you back to the admin committee, so the admin committee can put a resolution together one way or another for the August meeting. Okay? New business, oral committee reports, review committee minutes, review vouchers, claims, and bills. Announcements, the next regular county board meeting will be July 23rd at 9 a.m. Anything else? Announcement-wise? The meeting per diem code is 625. Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further business to be transacted, I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn. And before we do it, though, I'd like to thank all the supervisors for giving their input into that last item we discussed, because that's why the administrative committee brought it back here. I think, I don't like to speak for anybody else, much less a group, but I think our feeling was it was an important enough decision that before we made a resolution to bring to the board, we should hear from the board to get any of their ideas that we can discuss at our future meeting. That's why I took it anyway. So I thank everybody for that.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.